Hey, also, we're going to tie up the Razmataz fly. It's a fly we like to throw here locally, especially when the redfish are feeding on the shrimp. Love throwing it in those scenarios for sure.
This is a local pattern, actually. A guy named Raz Reid came up with it, hence the name Razmataz. The original pattern, they used supreme hair for the tail, which is a little bit stiffer. Today we're going to be using craft fur because that's what we have. But you can switch out tail materials and kind of make it your own. I think the important thing for this one is more of the color, just kind of those tan and brown kind of natural colors. So I usually like my tail about 2 to 2.5 times the length of the hook shank. And so we do use a little bit longer hook shank on these flies. As you'll see later, we'll tie in a hot spot up front in front of the eyes. So a little bit longer tail on this.
I like using for my transition, I like using this polar chenille just to throw a little copper transition look into this thing. So I'm just going to spin this up real quick. John, you like using some other stuff, don't you?
Yeah, so I like to keep it a little bit simpler. You know, not everyone has polar chenille, but most people have crystal flash. So
Yeah.
like some gold or root beer colored crystal flash, you know, somewhere between 5 and 8 strands of crystal flash, about the same length of the tail. You kind of get the same effect.
Probably doesn't make the difference whether or not the fish is going to eat it, but I like clean transitions between fabrics.
And you know, and I think that's the great part about tying your own flies is you can kind of experiment. You can make it a little bit different. You can make it kind of your own little creation there. And so yeah, I guess technically this is just a variation of the razzmatazz.
And then slide up here and throw the bead chain on real quick. So you can put different weights on this. We typically use the razzmatazz when the fish are feeding on the shrimp. So I want it to float a little higher oftentimes. So generally we're using bead chain on this thing. Do some wraps in here.
And like Rob said, a lot of times we're fishing this in the fall when shrimp spawn is happening. You know, rides a little higher in the water column, almost like a shrimp that's already been pushed up from being chased by redfish. Mm-hmm. And you'll see the redfish come up, even off the bottom. They'll come up and they'll be fighting over it during the fall time.
But I think you already said you could use this anytime, right?
Yeah, you can use it anytime. I tend to use it a lot more in the fall, personally.
For sure. All right, let's wrap this on.
So for the body, just the brown or root beer cactus chenille, just palmered up, you know, right behind the bead chain eyes there to kind of make the body of the fly.
The next thing I'm going to do is throw a weed guard on here. Oftentimes I'm using this fly when I don't need a weed guard. So I'll just use a single weed guard. If I knew I was going to be throwing it in the grass a lot, I would do a double weed guard. In this case though, a single weed guard will do the trick. And if I do find myself throwing it on a low tide or something, I'm not in the grass at all, I can just cut this weed guard right off if I wanted to, or smash it down, either way, if it's getting in the way. But yeah, just a quick single weed guard there. Do some wraps on that, stand it up. So there, the weed guard's fixed in place. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that. And then one of the last touches is gonna be this little red deal on the front.
So this is just a piece of small red chenille. A lot of trout guys use it to tie San Juan worm, so you probably already have it in your box if you're a trout guy. Just creates a nice hot spot at the front of the fly.
whip finish that and put some bars on the tail, and she's ready to fish.
Yeah, so this is a super easy fly to tie. Obviously, doesn't take too long. Very versatile. Tie it in different colors, sizes, weights. But this is our favorite and kind of the closest to the original. It's a great shrimp imitation. So anywhere you have shrimp, pretty much everything eats shrimp. So it's always a good go-to fly, especially here in the Low Country.
Finish up these bars, and I'll probably do a little more work on that when it's off the vise, but there it is.